a man who knows a lot about weather. How achievable is this?
Well, you're looking at a really large effort that's taking place, and it's been categorically proven that man can change the weather, but at what cost? Remember the other guy, as President Biden calls him, not the other dog. What a ham. It's unbelievable. The other guy tried, or at least thought about, nuking a hurricane. That wouldn't exactly work. That's like trying to go after a fly with a rifle or shotgun. So we can have climate modification. I want to point out, I am not a climatologist, but I did spend about 25 years on TV talking about the weather, so picked up a little bit through osmosis. And I'm wearing the sweatshirt today because we're doing a little science, and my daughter has just picked up a position at Temple University starting this fall in September as an attending physician and an associate professor. So giving a shout out to the folks on North Broad Street in Philadelphia. But I thought we'd look at it this way. Right now, China has pumped some money into this, and their neighbors need to be concerned because it's not a zero-sum game. You've got a situation where if you modify the weather in China, the neighbors, Vietnam, Thailand, Burma, all kinds of places can have fallout from it. You mentioned India. Of course, India, also another neighbor of China. But look at it this way. What we're dealing with here is we've got China. They've got a spoon. Let's say you've got a big pool, big swimming pool, kind of like our pool back there in the driveway. You got a big pool, and you got some crazy little kid in there, got a spoon, and they're pouring food coloring dye into the pool. And what is going on with this? Sure, it'll have an impact on a corner of the pool, and that impact will spread. But we have climate change, which is like somebody on the other side pouring it with not milk, maybe sludge into the environment. And so that is what needs to be looked at. Clearly, this is not something that can be ignored, the Chinese modification. But what we've got going on here is something called the Atlantic. It really affects many continents. The Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation. That is the core of what is known as the Gulf Stream. And it starts off Africa. It affects South America, North America, and of course, Europe. And right now, that is something that I think has more preeminence over Chinese climate change because there is this big cold blob southwest of Greenland. And what that is doing is that is inhibiting that cold water in the North Atlantic is inhibiting the Gulf Stream, which goes way back. Ponce de Leon in 1513 first talked about the Gulf Stream. And of course, Benjamin Franklin did scientific experiments on his journeys back and forth between the old and new worlds to categorically prove that it exists. And it is a key. It is a key to, say, places like Sweden and Finland being inhabitable because it just pumps so much heat into that region. And right now with climate change, that is being disrupted. And climate scientists have gone back and they can go through the ice cores and they found that this has happened in the past and it can be long, long cycles or in relative climatic terms, short cycles. So we're talking about maybe just tens of years, and we could be reaching a tipping point very quickly. What's happening is a lot of scientists hypothesize is the melting of the ice in Greenland is pouring that cold water into the North Atlantic and interrupting that heat transfer of energy that heads towards Europe. So that is one of the things that I think needs to be studied. And of course, we do need to worry about the modification. But you got to remember here, Mike, climate change, huge gallon of sludge milk, sour milk being poured into our oceans, making a huge impact. What China's doing, kind of a teaspoon. It can have an effect. It can cloud the water. It can cause problems or solve problems. Of course, they tout that it didn't rain for the start of the Beijing Olympics back in 2008. Was that because of their modification or was that just because of the weather? Well, we don't know for sure. But this is something that would be better, of course, instead of one country doing it unilaterally, to have bipartisan agreements. And of course, back, I think it was in the 70s, they had an agreement not to weaponize the weather, because if you get good at climate change, you've got a battle and you've got people that are coming over to bomb you, probably a good idea to create some storms and thunderstorms. So that technically would be against international treaties. But the peaceful modification of weather, which is what the Chinese are saying that they are doing now, and very likely is true, that is not up for international treaty at this point. So it's something we need to keep an eye on. It's something that's very important, and certainly international observers should be allowed in by the Beijing government. But compared to what's going on in the North Atlantic and the cold blob, I will give credit to the New York Times. They had an outstanding, with graphics to try to help you explain this, New York Times, and maybe you can find that link, Mike, and I'll see if I can send it to you, and you can put it on the bottom of this to give folks an idea of what is going on. And I think that is much more of a threat, because what that will do if we lose the Gulf Stream, places like Northern Africa, which of course not known as the most politically stable point on our planet, that will see reduced rain, increased salinity of water in the South Atlantic. We're seeing some of the least salty water, least salinity in the northern areas around northern Greenland and up into the Arctic because of all the melt that is taking place. And climate change, you say, well, it's just so cold in Texas. Well, what happened is the Arctic warmed so fast, it has to push that cold air somewhere, and the folks in Texas got it. So climate, a very, very interesting animal to try to predict. I was reading some quotes from climatologists, and one said, the climate is an angry beast. You don't want to be poking it with a stick, and that's kind of what the Chinese are doing. They're poking it with a stick with what they're happening with climate change. But the rest of the world with their modification, the rest of the world with climate change, we're throwing the sludge at it. So I think right now, something to be concerned about. One of my major worries compared to COVID and all the other things that are going on, no. But I'm sure, at least hopeful, that in the Biden administration, there are a couple of Asian specialists at the State Department that are on this and keeping tabs on what the Chinese are doing. Because while it is certainly something that is important and worth watching, whether they're going to be able to achieve their goal and have modification over 60% of the country by 2025, as someone that spent 25 years dealing with the weather, admittedly, mainly as a TV meteorologist, I'm very skeptical of their abilities to do that with any great deal of reliability. It's a lot of energy and effort for what it sometimes is a minimal amount of change.
Yeah, cloud seeding has been around for a long time, even in Australia, because we're such a large continent and a hell of a number of droughts and very arid, but you need cloud. So if you haven't any clouds, it's like, well, blue skies, all the seeding would do is probably hit you on the head.
You need condensation nuclei is the appropriate term for it. So without condensation nuclei, what are you going to do? And of course, one thing that we are seeing is increased rainfall. I just saw the folks in Western Australia. They've just finished one of their wettest summers in quite a while because here again, more temperature, warmer atmosphere, it can support more moisture. So increased rainfall globally is one of the results of a warming environment.
Yes, we're heading up to tomorrow. In fact, I'm going to journey back to the up to the north of Queensland, which is one of the areas that you've been. I'm not too sure if they've taken down those least wanted posters of you, but yeah, we're there at Christmas and we hit a cyclone, and we thought, wow, this is interesting. Well, this trip tomorrow, we're doing the train because we really can't get out of Australia, so we thought, let's see part of Queensland, and we're going straight back into another cyclone. I mean, it's just cyclonic to say the least.
Well, that is one of the situations you're talking about here with the Gulf Stream. And if you reduce the Atlantic oscillation with the currents there, you could have a real chance of increasing Atlantic hurricanes, because one of the things the Gulf Stream does is it regulates the heat balance of our planet. It takes where there's way too much heat between the equator and the Tropic of Cancer and moves that heat to the north. So if you reduce how much heat is being moved, then you have all that heat sitting around. And what is heat? It is fuel for hurricanes. Now, I don't know the full dynamics of the circulation patterns around northern Queensland, but I would think something similar could be taking place, because the reduction of the Gulf Stream in the North Atlantic, that is going to have climatic consequences worldwide. What the Chinese are doing, maybe for their neighbors, and certainly some localized impacts, but compared to the other, it is almost literally a spoonful in the swimming pool.
And a great debate. Even your swimming pool on the driveway, it's still a great debate, climate change. There are those that believe it is happening, but it's not as extreme as others say. And yet others say it is more extreme than you could ever believe. So it's this debate that will continue to go on and on.
Well, we may live to see it, because a tipping point and through climatic science shows that you can't say it's happening. The dog's going to say it's happening. You got to pay attention to this, because we've got a tipping point, and it could be just a matter of decades before it's hard to put the genie back in the box. Just ask those people in Texas that are still without drinkable water about climate change and how many pipes of their ceilings burst. Oh my God, it's raining in the kitchen again.
You must have been impressed with the renewables. They really worked well. Not.
Well, what happened was they weren't weatherized there.
The
renewables worked fine. In fact, they worked better than the fossil fuels. The thing is, they said, oh, it ain't ever going to get this cold down here in Texas. We don't need to do that. No way. It's never going to get that cold. You know, one thing you learn living in Las Vegas is try not to say the word never, because as soon as you say the word never, that happens. Like my partner Mark used to always say, have a bad time at the casino. And he'd say, don't worry, they never closed. What did they do for 79 days? They closed. So never is not a good word to use. I'd never try to say never.
Kirk Clyatt, a political commentator, the weather meteorologist, knows all about all. And with the dogs, thank you very much.
Go Temple Owls. Temple Owls. Dr. Kirk Clyatt. Look for if you're in Philadelphia.